Welcome to Thursday Thoughts, your weekly dose of real, honest conversation on all things personal growth. These are the chats Lucy and I love having every week over on Instagram. They're unfiltered, unedited, and always rooted in practical tools and a dose of inspiration. Let's dive in.
So I thought we could talk about the idea of taking up space. And I think it's something that we've talked about in a roundabout way before, because it kind of speaks to the whole playing small thing.
Yes.
And I think it's just this idea, and I think it's such a female thing to feel like we shouldn't be taking up space. We shouldn't be letting our voice be heard. And I was thinking about this actually earlier, how I remember when I was working at Radio 2 and we used to obviously have meetings and stuff. And in meetings, I would always feel so kind of nervous to even say very much, and I would say as little as possible. I would just kind of sit there feeling like everybody else was better than me and I was some kind of fraud who shouldn't have even been there. And I remember that feeling so many times during the course of my life. And I know now when I look back that it really ties in with this idea of just being afraid to take up space and being afraid to be heard. And I think it comes down actually to kind of not feeling good enough and kind of not feeling worthy. So I just thought it was worth having a conversation about this because, like I said just now, I think it's a really, really female thing that we are scared to be heard, be seen. We're scared of being too much. So we kind of suppress our true selves. This all ties into another thing that you and I have talked about so much, which is just, being authentic to who you truly are. And the irony is that one of the hardest things for us to do is to be who we truly are, which is bonkers when you think about it, that the hardest thing to do is just to be ourselves. But I really believe that is the case for so many of us. So yeah, I just thought it was an interesting topic to
Yes.
discuss.
Yeah. Because when I was thinking about this, it's not really a surprise that so many of us feel like this. We go around just apologising, don't we? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, even if it was your fault. You bump into someone, you go, oh, I'm so sorry, or can I, or you just go, can I just say? We kind of put all these little prefixes onto what we say, almost apologising for what we're about to say, or just for being there and for having an opinion. But it's hardly surprising when, as kids, and we all do it. I do it. I've done it to my kids as well. We're kind of trying to stop them being their full selves of being noisy, maybe being a bit out there, and we try and shrink them so that they sit quietly, they're polite, they don't necessarily, they say sorry, they don't snatch things from other people out. We're trying to kind of make everyone kind of just be nice and quiet and still. And I think as girls, particularly, we expect girls to sit politely and be quiet. It's that whole, you you're seen but not heard type philosophy. And I just think it's been conditioned into us for so long, over so many generations, that we still kind of have that as a hangover into today's society. And it takes a lot, you're right, to really be out there, to be bold, to be taking up that space. And when we are, I don't know about you, but for me it really is a feeling of that's just too much, and what will everyone think, and who am I to take up that space, which is ridiculous really, because and I'm, and we've all got different personalities. I'm not necessarily that person who is big and brash. I can be, but there are obviously other characters and personalities which are much louder and bigger, but have also been told to shrink. So I think, as you say, the most important thing here is that we are just able to fully step into ourselves and
Mm.
to speak up as ourselves and to have our voice and to stop apologizing
Yeah,
for who we are and for what we have to say and for our opinions and for what we believe in. I
totally.
think that's the key, which is, as you said, it's ridiculously hard. But I think what we can do is just, firstly, just have an awareness of when we are apologizing all the
Mm.
time and when we are shrinking back and when we are, and I know personally, I've got a real tendency to sometimes, particularly if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed or if things all feel a bit too much, or I don't know, I go in sort of cycles of this. It's a real cyclical thing for me. I will really withdraw and I will really hold back and I won't want to post things on Instagram. I won't want to be seen. I feel much more comfortable to be
Mm.
taking up less space and to be shrinking.
Mm.
But then there's other times where I find that, okay, I'm ready now to share my voice. I'm ready to put myself out there. I'm ready to create more, to take up more space. So I think that's probably quite natural because I think it's for a lot of us to be out there all the time can feel a lot energetically. So I, yeah, for me, it's an interesting one because I'm really aware of when I'm in that place of being able to take up more space. But
Mm.
also, I'm very aware that I do tend to sometimes really contract. But for me, I think that's probably more and bandwidth and energetic thing.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm only just thinking about that as I'm saying it out loud now.
yeah. But I mean, I think there is a difference. I mean, I totally hear you on it, but I think there is a difference between what you're talking about and people who are scared to take up space. And I think,
Yeah.
I mentioned at the beginning, and you mentioned these words just now, which is this notion of being too much. I think it really does. And I know for my own part that I have definitely felt, quote, too much over my life. So I've kind of just quietened down, just calm down, just chill out, just, don't get so passionate. Don't be so enthusiastic. All of these things about which are inherent parts of my personality. I've always been really enthusiastic. I've always been really passionate. I literally can't help it. But certainly there was a time um, where I didn't allow it to kind of shine through. And again, going back to the sort of work context, I think this, for me, that is where it used to come out the most. And it was almost like I would be a very different person at work, depending on the situation. Oh my God, sorry, I'm suddenly getting loads of notifications that I'm just having to swipe off my screen. Yeah, I think it kind of depended on, the meeting that I was in or the situation I was in, but for sure. And I don't know why I always think about this when I was at Radio 2. And I think it's because actually I always felt like I didn't deserve to be there. It was like it was
Mm.
this place that I'd wanted to work in for so long. And I always felt as if someone was going to sort of tap me on the shoulder and go, you don't belong here. So I think it's part and parcel of the same thing. But funny enough, this Thursday Thoughts, obviously on our podcast will be going out on Thursday, but tomorrow, or 2 days ago, if you're listening on the podcast, this Tuesday's episode of my podcast is with a really, really, really fabulous woman called Angela Gentile, who's also single and doesn't have kids. And we had such a great conversation. It was one of my favorite conversations ever for the podcast. And she basically talks about this idea of, we were talking about this idea of being too much. And she said it in such a brilliant, brilliant way. She was like, go get less. If I'm too much for you, go and get less. And I think that
Mm.
I can certainly, and we were talking about it in the context of relationships, but I can certainly think about times in relationships where I felt like my boyfriend at the time wanted me to just calm down a bit, just be a bit quieter, just don't be so much. And so I think going back to your point, there really is a difference between the times when it's just your bandwidth, meaning you don't really
Mm.
want to show up and you don't really want to be taking up space. There's a difference between that and feeling like you're having to push it down. And for me, I'm exactly the same as you. There are times when I'm, Christ, especially on Instagram, Jesus. And I've had, last week, I was telling you about how I was feeling a bit low and a bit crappy. I just wasn't feeling very good. And certainly last week, I did not feel like showing up on Instagram at all. It felt like such an effort. But there are other times when I really feel like it. And those are the times, and Instagram is a really good example of where you do get to take up space. And probably not everybody listening or watching this, listening to or watching this, necessarily shares on Instagram, but you and I most certainly do. And that's such a good example of where, I, even to this day, I still, depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes I will show up on Instagram a little bit less than I truly want to be. And it might be because I'm scared that I'm going to offend somebody. It might be because I feel like, oh, well, I can't say it like that because that's just going to piss everyone off. Do you know what I mean? So we do that. And I don't think men do that in the same way. I just don't think they, I'm not saying all, this is a massive generalization, but I do think it is a gender thing, like for sure, men do not feel this need to, apologize for themselves in the same way that women do. And one other thing actually that I've just thought of is, and I heard somebody talking about this. I can't remember. It was a good couple of years ago, but I do remember somebody it must have been on a podcast probably, talking about how, and this is something I do, I often finish sentences by saying, do you know what I mean?
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
And I've realized that is a need for validation. I can't just finish a fucking sentence. I can't just say what I want to say and like leave it at that. I'm sure I've done it on here a million times, but I will often, not always, but I will frequently finish something that I'm saying by saying, do you know what I mean? Just and actually that right there is a fear of being judged. It's a fear of taking up space. It's a fear of, it's just a need for that validation. And I was just about to say, do you know what I mean?
But it's yes. It's like I say quite a lot. Do you understand what I'm saying, or does that make sense? So it's the same sort of thing. It's like, I'm not sure that what I'm saying is good enough to be out there. But actually, it's like, of course it's good enough to be out there. You can say what the hell you want and just bloody say it, and it's fine, and just be you and stop worrying about what everybody else is thinking, that people are, it's that fear of judgment ultimately. Am I good enough? Am I okay to be even here doing this? Who am I to be doing this? And we all need a certain level of validation, but it's the more that we can believe in ourselves, trust ourselves, really understand ourselves, the less we need for that validation.
Completely.
I always, because it's so funny, with my breathwork sessions I lead in the mornings in the inner space, I don't, a lot of sessions, like Zoom sessions, people do a lot of commenting. How are you feeling at the beginning? How are you feeling at the end? And which is always really nice because then you get that immediate feedback. I don't do that in my inner space sessions because it's 7:30 in the morning. People have a very tight time. It's like 20 minutes. And I feel like I've really got to keep to that 20 minutes because people are fitting it in and they've got busy stuff to get going. So I don't do that. But I always at the end of it, just sort of like, I just need, and I don't get the feedback. I do sometimes get messages from people afterwards, but it's so funny. I'm literally craving just for someone to say that was amazing, or I feel so much better, or whatever. But I kind of realized that's only really for me to have that validation that was okay. And I have really been leaning into this feeling of like, I've just got to trust that, of course, it was bloody amazing. I'm an expert at this. I can do this, and of course, it's great. Otherwise, I wouldn't keep turning up and continue doing it. But it's so interesting how still I've done hundreds of these sessions. Still, I doubt myself. I need that validation. But I think it's a real invitation to actually lean into that discomfort and I try and do this every time because I always think about it. I'm always like, oh gosh, I would really love to say, oh, right in the comments, but I don't because it's just faffy at that time of the morning. But it's just like, no, trust yourself. That was great. And and just lean into that. And I think that's the way to do it. We've got to believe and trust ourselves, and it is a practice. And the more that you do that, the more you can rid yourself of this constant self-doubt, this constant apologizing for being you and showing up and doing your thing.
Totally. One thing that has just come to mind is, I tell you, when I get this really badly is when I've been interviewed for somebody else's podcast. And I've been interviewed for a couple of podcasts recently, and one of which last week. And I felt, as I was kind of in it, I felt like it was a really good conversation, but I found myself at the end, and I always say this, it's ridiculous. It's like I'm going to be freaking 50 on January the 1st, and I'm sort of so needy in this respect. But I will always say, and I did it last week, was at the end, when we start recording, I always say, was that okay? Are you happy with that? And it's just like, oh my God, stop it. But it's because I worry, when I'm unfiltered, which I quite, normally am, as you know, I will suddenly get a fear that I've said something outrageous. It's like it comes down to trusting yourself. And so thinking about that interview last week, I didn't, I didn't dwell on it, but certainly immediately afterwards, I felt like, oh God, oh shit, was that all right? Or did I say something that was like completely demented? It's about trusting yourself. And I think I've got a lot better at that, in terms of, I won't obsess. Like, I'll do it, I've been interviewed for quite a few podcasts and, or interviews for whatever. And these days I can much better, like, come off it. I might have 5 minutes of kind of like cringing, going, oh God, I can't believe I said that, or I should have been more that, or I should have been less that, but actually I can let it go. But it's just so interesting how I always come off an interview and go, was that okay? And actually, when you think about it, like, that probably doesn't come across very well, because that does not give the impression of somebody who's confident in what they're saying. So I need to stop saying that. And I think it'd be interesting for anyone watching or listening to this to, like you and I were just talking about, the kind of, does that make sense? Or do you know what I mean? Like, just catch yourself when you're doing it. And I'm going to try and do that too. And sometimes I do catch myself before I say it, and I stop myself, but often I don't. And I just said, it's such a habit, isn't it? We just get into such habits of doing these things. But yeah, I thought the interview one was, the interview thing was quite an interesting thing to think about. How, and again, it's like, we have to be able to give ourselves that validation. We have to trust ourselves. We cannot expect, I can't expect that every time I'm interviewed for somebody's podcast, they're going to go, oh my God, you were so great. You were so, but that's kind of what you want, isn't it?
Yes.
It's kind of what you want. But you can't expect that every time somebody interviews you, because it's just not going to happen. But it really is this skill that we need to develop, to validate ourselves and just know inherently that we are enough, that the interview was fine, that we made sense, that, we made interesting points or whatever. And
yes. And so what I do, and we've talked about this before, is when you do get that validation from somebody who says, yeah, that was great, or I love this part of your work, or whatever it is, screenshot it and use that in a bank of evidence, so that you can always come back to and give yourself a boost to know that, yes, you are bloody brilliant and you are amazing. And use that to kind of help build yourself up. So in those moments when you don't get it, and can trust, okay, it's all right. I'm doing my best, and I wouldn't have been asked to do this if they didn't think I could. And you've just got to, as we say, trust. And I think one thing you can really do to help with that, which I'm really starting to do more and more of, before anything which fills me with a little bit of anxiety or makes me feel a little bit scared, I will just literally take a breath. I will put my shoulders back, sit up straight, and physically take up more space. So rather than sitting crouched over, arms crossed, legs crossed, hunched, where you are visibly shrinking, you just put your shoulders back, and yeah, you are taking up more space. And it's amazing, that shift already about in how you feel, in terms of how much more confident you feel. Also, another thing to say on that is the way that we show up, the way that we dress, the way that we present ourselves. I had a really interesting conversation on my podcast actually with this woman who used to be on well, she's a stylist. She does a lot of celebrity styling and stuff, and she was saying that we talk about midlife and getting older and how you dress and becoming more invisible, because I think a lot of people, particularly women, feel like they become more and more invisible the older they get. But she was saying, I don't buy that. I think we bring that upon ourselves, because as we get older, we begin to think that we shouldn't be so bold in the way that we dress. We start to try and hide parts of our body which is changing. So we wear like really baggy clothes and really dull colours, so that we sort of almost hide into the background. She said, because that's actually making you invisible. Actually, what you need to do is present yourself, even if you don't feel it on the inside. If you can present yourself in something which is bold and bright and colourful, or makes you feel bloody amazing, then you are not going. You're going to be out there, and it's how your energy is, how you present yourself, in terms of how visible you are and how much space you're taking up, which I really loved. And I could really see that's what we all do. We just sort of play it all a little bit safe in what we wear, so that we blend and we fit in. And she was saying, when I go to something like a network event, which I absolutely hate, I will make sure I'm wearing something absolutely bloody fabulous, so that I shine and I stand out. And then Pete said, it's amazing. People just sort of gravitate towards you, because you're not just being invisible, blending into the background. So that is something which I'm really going to lean into a little bit more. Think about what I'm wearing. And obviously you've got to be comfortable, but pushing it in a sense, in a way that helps you to stand out as well.
Yeah, this is part of a wider conversation. I think we should do another Monday Motivation on aging, because it's a conversation that I find I have more and more on the podcast. I interviewed somebody called BB Lynch for the podcast a couple of weeks ago. She's absolutely fabulous. The episode hasn't gone out yet, but we talked a lot about aging, and how, especially as women, once we kind of hit whatever, pick a bloody number, once we hit whatever age, we start to feel invisible, or we start to feel like we feel invisible. But actually, what BB and I were talking about is the fact that, we can say, well, it's, society makes me feel not seen, society makes me feel invisible, but actually it's how we feel. Because I'm about to turn 50 and I don't feel invisible. I feel more visible than I've ever felt in my life. I felt way more invisible back in my 20s and 30s than I do now. So it really is about, it's always, as with everything, it's about what is going on between your freaking ears. It really, really is. And, I think that's ultimately what you and I always want to put across in these sessions. It's about having the awareness, and it's about shifting the way that you think, and subsequently the way that you feel. Because as you and I both know, mindset really is just so incredibly important. And it's important when it comes to this conversation, taking up space. We have to talk to ourselves. We have to get control over that monkey mind that is just trying constantly to make us feel anxious, or make us feel bad, or make us feel worthless, or whatever. And it's always going to start with catching those thoughts and that awareness that we talk about every single bloody week, but we'll continue to do so because it's so important. So yeah, I think the whole aging thing, maybe we can, I know that we've done a Monday Motivation on that, but I don't think you can talk about it enough, because, and even though you and I probably have listeners who are significantly younger than us, I think it's a conversation that, you can hear. It doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, not in your 50s. As a woman, it's still good to hear that, because apart from anything else, I think it's really important for young women to hear older women having conversations about not going, oh God, yeah, well, you're going to be 50, it's all downhill from here. I hate that. I really hate that.
Me too.
I can't stand it when I hear people, I know people who literally refuse to, quote, admit how old they are. And that in itself, if you're going around refusing to admit how old you are, then how is that reinforcing what you think about aging? Like, that is the worst thing you can do. I say my age as much as I possibly can. I'm 49, by the way. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm super proud of being 51. I'm so proud of it. I'm always proud in the gym. When I'm in the gym working out alongside all these young people, I'm desperate for someone to ask me how old I am. No one ever has done. Because I'm like, yeah, I'm 51 and I feel really bloody amazing. I'm about to, after this, I've just signed up. We've got new paddle courts at the end, literally at the end of our road, paddle tennis. I've never played before. I'm going along at 10 o'clock with 5 other strangers never met before, and I'm going to have a first ever paddle lesson.
What's
because
paddle tennis?
It's paddle tennis. It's a mixture between squash, tennis.
Is it like pickleball?
It is. You've got glass bits at the back of the court, so the balls are allowed to bounce and to hit the wall. So it's slightly different. It's shorter. It's smaller courts. Anyway, I'm about to find out. I'm about to go and have a beginner lesson, but it looks really fun, and I want to learn. So it's like, yeah, I'm 51, and I want to go and learn how to play paddle, and I'm going to go and do it with 5 people I've never met before. Why not? For for an hour of this on a Monday morning, I can do that. So yeah, it's about. I just think you can never use your age as an excuse for not trying new things. Or I think it's important just to keep trying new things, learning new stuff, and never ever using it as an excuse. Because it's because of if you start telling yourself, oh, it's because I'm old, or I can't do that because I'm old, or my body's failing me, then those thoughts become what you're saying to yourself. It's just not
100%.
helpful whatsoever. So yeah,
100%. Yeah. Funnily enough, we're reading in my membership at the moment, we're reading a book called The Expectation Effect by David Robson, which is, I'm finding it absolutely fascinating. And I haven't got to the chapter yet, but I know that he does a chapter about age. But basically, so far, he's talked about, things like the placebo effect, the nocebo effect. He's talked, essentially how our expectations really shape our reality. And when it comes to, and this is one that resonates with me so much. So basically, there were various studies that have been done where, so for example, a doctor will frame the outcome of I can't remember whether it's a surgery or the point is, I'm being very inarticulate, but basically it makes a difference how a GP frames something to a patient. So for example, if a doctor tells you all about the side effects of something in great detail and how, oh, well, you might get this, there is a big difference between that and if you do not know what the side effects are. And I've always been one of those people who I'll always be that person who's like, I don't want to know, la 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 la, don't want to know. It turns out it's a fucking good reason for not wanting to know. It's that expectation. It's that, and it's so interesting, this book, because the last chapter that I read was about mass hysteria. So how we all manage to wind each other up. So there was a study. Sorry, I'm going for a bit of a tangent, but there was a study where teenagers, can't remember what country, but a load of teenagers started getting ill. Right, so they're getting some illness. Can't remember what the symptoms were. Long story short, it transpired that they'd been watching a very popular soap for teens, and the main character came down with this strange illness. And that caused these teenagers to feel and experience the same symptoms. So I really recommend, and anyway, I'm looking forward to the chapter on aging because I can imagine what it's going to be about. And so it really is so much to do with, your attitude and your state of mind. Anyway, it's 9:30. I'll shut up. I've gone off a total tangent. Can't remember what we were talking about now.
Taking up space.
I've taken up quite enough space for one day.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks, people. Thank you for listening, watching. Jodie, thank you for your comment. Love this. Thank you both. I relate. I'm coming up to 44. I am determined to work to embrace the power of aging. It's an honor to grow older, to live a long life, gain experience, learn, shine. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, love that.
Love that. All right.
All right, love.
Well,
We'll be back next week.
have a happy week and
You
see you
too.
next week. All right.
Lots of love.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.